When music moves from one chord to another, there are 5 different types of motion that can occur between voices. In this video, we will discuss them. The first 3 are shown on this slide. The first type of motion between voices is static motion. Static motion isn't really motion at all. Neither voice moves in any direction. The next type of motion shown here is oblique. Oblique motion occurs when one voice is static and another voice moves in either direction. In this case, our alto voice stays the same on F, and our soprano voice moves up a fourth from C to F. The next type of motion is contrary motion. Contrary motion is when both voices move in opposite directions. Here, the upper voice moves up by a fourth, and the bottom voice moves down by a fourth. The next 2 types of motion can sometimes be confused, so I've put them together on one slide. Similar motion is when voices move the same direction, but a different distance. Here on the left, our alto voice moves up a major second from F to G. Our soprano voice also moves up, but by the distance of a perfect fourth from C to F. Both voices have moved up in pitch, but by a different distance. This is called similar motion. Parallel motion occurs when voices move in the same direction and the same distance. I've shown that here on the right. Our alto voice moves up a major third from F. Our soprano voice also ascends by a major third from C to E. Notice that we have the distance of a fifth between both beats, from F to C and from A to E. This is an example of what we would call parallel fifths. To recap, there are 5 types of motion that can occur between any voice when you have multiple voices moving from one chord to another. Static motion occurs when both voices stay the same. Oblique motion is when one voice stays on the same pitch and the other voice moves in any direction. Contrary motion occurs when both voices move, but in the opposite direction. And lastly, similar motion occurs when both voices move in the same direction, but different distances. And we get parallel motion when both voices move the same direction, the same distance. Let's practice identifying types of motion between voices. Here I've written a passage in 4-part texture. Let's start with beat 1 moving to beat 2, looking at the soprano and the alto. The soprano voice stays the same on C. The alto voice ascends by step. This would be called oblique motion. One voice stayed the same, the other voice moved. Now let's take a look at the same 2 voices from beat 2 to beat 3. Our soprano voice descends by a minor third, and our alto voice descends by a major second. This is an example of similar motion. They moved in the same direction, but not the same distance. Now let's compare the soprano and the bass voices. Back to the top, we know the soprano stays the same on C from beat 1 to beat 2. Our bass voice, however, descends a fourth from A to E. This would be an example, again, of oblique motion. One voice stayed the same while the other voice moved. Now let's look at the same 2 voices, the soprano and the bass, from beat 2 to beat 3. We know that our soprano voice descends by a minor third from C to A. Our bass voice, however, ascends by a half step from E to F natural. This is an example of contrary motion. The soprano voice descended by a third, and the bass voice ascended by a minor second, moving different amounts but in opposite directions. I hope that was helpful. I'll see you guys next time.